I had no clue what to expect from Magical Fairy Force before I first played it. To be honest, the art design was fantastic, and the screenshots were intriguing, but I had no clue what the heck was going on in any of them. But the whole fairy thing isn't really something that would draw me in. I don't really care about fantasy fairies and Tinkerbell stuff, so that was the main reason why it took me so long to give Magical Fairy Force a shot. But with the new Champion Edition hitting Steam back in May of this year, I figured this was as good of a time as any to see how the game fared on the 5200. So is this a shining example of why we need more homebrew on the 5200? Or is it the reason why we don't? Let's find out. Magical Fairy Force was brought to the 5200 by AtariAge back in 2020. It was programmed and designed by Ryan Whitmer, and has since been expanded on in fantastic ways. As I said before, I didn't know what to expect, but I was super pleased to read that this game supports the mighty 5200 trackball. I don't have one, however. But I have to imagine after playing it that the trackball control has to be incredible for Magical Fairy Force. I would definitely recommend trying that or a good aftermarket controller, because the stock 5200 stick made my hands hurt after about 30 minutes or so. That's no fault of the game, but was actually due to the intense battles I engaged in, but it's still worth noting. So in Magical Fairy Force, you play as one of 8 characters, who appear to be defending or trying to conquer Fairyland. It's mostly easy to tell who the good guys are and who the evil characters are, but they are all designed well and look unique to one another in their character portraits and player sprites. Given the limitations of the 5200 and the ambitions of the gameplay, it had to have been a crazy difficult task to make every character look different and have a splash of personality. So I applaud Ryan for accomplishing this. Once you select the fairy that speaks to you the most, then you enter an arena and begin to do battle against one another. And this is where the most explanation is probably needed. So the first player is always on the bottom, and the CPU, or second player, is on the top. You don't fight each other directly, but rather by blowing up stuff that wanders on your side of the screen. The clouds need to be blown up to spawn more fairy powder, which will increase your flight meter. The flight meters are in the center of the screen, and if they deplete, you automatically lose. If you touch a cloud, you lose more of your flight meter, and it seems to decrease over time or as you move anyway, which sort of makes sense. So blow up clouds and collect the powder when it spawns. But we still have to battle our opponent, and that's where the sparks that spawn above and below the flight meter comes into play. You want to avoid the projectiles from these sparks, and then proceed to blow them up. If you get hit by their bullets, then you lose one of your 4 life counters. Lose all 4 and your opponent wins the battle, and vice versa. As you blow up the sparks, your gauge in the lower right corner fills until it begins to flash. This is your power for directly attacking your opponent. You can shoot thunderbolts at your opponent at any time while using minimal attack power. But honestly, this just feels wasteful to me. Instead, you want to wait until the bar is flashing, and then hit the lower fire button to use your special attack. This will send a character-specific attack to your opponent's playfield, and they are usually devastating and nearly impossible to avoid. Some characters send fists over that cover the opponent's playfield, others send over some sort of pong ball that bounces all over, and much more. These are inventive, fun, and the best part of Magical Fairy Force if you ask me. In single player, you'll fight through the rest of the cast to get a text ending for each character. And it's cool that Ryan included these endings. If I'm honest, Fairy Force feels like a fighting game on the 5200. The character select menu is very much influenced by Street Fighter, and the one-on-one fights are obviously similar to the fighting game format. I don't know if that was a big inspiration or not, but it seems to have informed a ton of the game's design and elements, which is not a bad thing. Overall, I think Magical Fairy Force plays well and is unique. It would have been nice to have more control over damaging your enemies, as many times I feel like I either lose to myself or have little input in the outcome of the matches. Not all the time, but it does happen, and more often than I would like. But I definitely think there is something here worth exploring and expanding on in the future. As I said before, graphically these characters are full of personality, and I guarantee you'll find at least one character that speaks to you. I like Porkchop myself, but the kitty also speaks to the trick-or-treater in me. I do wish that they played a little bit different, with some moving faster, some hitting harder, etc. It would make these great design elements feel like they have more purpose in the gameplay. A lot of love clearly went into the sprites, and the added elements of their eyes in the HUD area is a unique choice, and different than just putting their names there. I don't mind it, and some people will be charmed by it to be sure. The sound, on the other hand, is completely bare bones. It's not bad at all. I find almost all of it to be enjoyable and appropriate, but that's why it sucks that there isn't more included. Some menu music and background loops during gameplay would have been cool, especially with an option to turn them off just in case. The audio is definitely a weak spot in this otherwise awesome package for Magical Fairy Force. But with all the great and unique elements to the game, I do have to say that I got tired of single player faster than I would have liked. After about 30 to 40 minutes, I was done with Magical Fairy Force and ready to put it back on the shelf for a while. But I pulled it back down a few days later and I really enjoyed it again. Well, for about an hour anyway. There's some depth lacking in the gameplay, and I wish there was something more to keep me playing and invested for longer sessions. But again, I need to note that I play these games alone, and I have no doubt that with 2 players or a whole party of people, this would be a blast. And I guess that's with all fighting games, honestly. If the gameplay was tweaked to make me feel like I had more control over damaging my opponent, and maybe some sort of story mode was included, it would have gone a long way. And I know this is the 5200, we aren't going to get a crazy story mode, but I just felt like something more to help expand on and show off the personalities of these great characters would have gone a very, very long way. Magical Fairy Force feels like a good start to a franchise, and I can't wait to experience its Street Fighter II moment where it breaks out and becomes more than I could have ever imagined. But before we get to all that, we have to fly into the Atari Network Pros and Cons section to see what Magical Fairy Force has earned. And as always, we start with the pros. Magical Fairy Force has a ton of charm in its characters. The 8 selectable fairies are unique and different. What little sound is here is really good too. The graphics are top notch, and the gameplay is pretty unique. And Fairy Force is trackball compatible, and I'm sure playing this game with that awesome giant peripheral is a good time. Each character has their own super move, and seeing all of them is cool and rewarding. Unique character endings is a really cool touch too, and will add some longevity to the game, as well as the 2-player mode, and that's probably where Magical Fairy Force will shine the most. But for the cons, well, I have a couple. I want to start with the fact that sometimes I don't feel like I impact the outcome of the battles. I wish there was other ways of damaging my opponent. The sound is too sparse and the game really needed some music, even if it was just in the menus. Some super attacks are more useful than others, which stinks but is understandable. Using the stock 5200 controller, I found the game to make my hands sore after a while, but trackball and aftermarket gamepads are the way to go. While each character looks different, they mostly play the same. I kinda wish there was some differences in their speed, attacks, etc. And finally, I found myself just being tired of the game fairly quickly, at least in single player mode. Okay, so with all that weighed out, I think it's okay to give Magical Fairy Force 3 rebuilt 5200 controllers out of 5. What's here is good, and Ryan Whitmer has a fantastic base to build off of in the future. I bet a sequel on the 5200 would blow all of our socks off. And also, as I mentioned at the start of the video, fairies probably wasn't the best choice for a male-dominated hobby in the Atari homebrew scene. You know, there's gonna be a little bit of that whole, I'm a man, I can't be seen buying a game about fairies. But if that's you, then I implore you to take a look beyond that and just give it a try, because it's a good game. But hopefully most of us have moved on from that childish mentality by now. But anyway, now I want to hear from all of you. Does Magical Fairy Force look like a good game to you? Have you played it? And if so, do you agree or disagree with my review? Which of the 8 characters are your favorite? And have you played the new Magical Fairy Force Champion Edition that's available on Steam for $5? If so, is it worth picking up and playing? Let me know your thoughts on all this and more in the comments down below. And please, like and subscribe if you haven't. We're doing videos and reviews on homebrews for the whole month of May here on the channel, so hit the bell icon to be notified the next time we upload. Also, check out the Discord server and pick up some merch if you want to help the channel and get some hip new threads. Links in the description. And speaking of channel support, I'd like to thank the following classy Atarians for supporting the Atari Network on Patreon. It's $5 a month, and I give them special bonus features and a shout out at the end of my videos. So thank you to Jeremiah Thomas, Mr. Shua TV, Fence the Spook, Socrates63, Ball Gobbler, Jolt 7800, Head Trauma Bob, OG Hugo, and my own Celestial. You all rock. And with all that, I think it's time I wrap up this video. I've been the 7800 Pro Gamer, and I've had a ton of fun reviewing Magical Fairy Force for you all on the channel. Thanks for watching, and for all the support. And until next time, remember to stay classy, Atarians.